Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My Family of Four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. In the summer of 2021, the Myers family packed up their Jayco travel trailer and headed east to Florida to visit family they hadn't seen since before the pandemic. In this episode, we pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago, as they are just entering the Southwest and the state of Utah. If you haven't listened to episode 20, I encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast before jumping into this one. But let's dive in and pick up where we left off.
From there, we headed into Utah and checked out the Bonneville Salt Flats, which was a item on my bucket list that I wanted to do, and it was phenomenal. The skies were blue, the salt flats were white. I mean, we unhitched, Tim unhitched, I shouldn't say we, and we drove on the salt flats, and that was fun. That was a blast. That was a high point.
We even let the kids drive on the
We
salt
may
flats.
or may not have let the kids
That's all right.
drive on
I've
there.
let my kids drive on the Washington Beach, so.
But I Utah was just such a phenomenal part of our trip. So many highlights. The Bonneville Salt Flats are terrific.
When is Speed Week, by the way?
I don't know. It was pretty empty when we were there.
You
I think
think-
it's August, I think.
You would think that you're in the wrong place. Something's not right. We're not in the right place. Just keep driving, and you'll get to the end of the road, and you can go right onto the salt and drive. It's just like driving on the beach.
Yeah, that's great.
Stay away from wet salt, though.
Right.
It just went on for miles and miles. I wish we would have been there at night, because I heard at night it's just spectacular with the sun setting. You know, it didn't happen because we had the next destination to get to, but I'm glad we had a few hours there. You know, we sat and we had lunch. That was one of those times where, just
Fire up the camper
that's
and
exactly
have
what
lunch.
we did, and it was terrific.
That's awesome.
Then from Utah, we went down. We hit like the Moab area, which was such a highlight of my trip. I hope we can go back again.
Yep.
We did Arches, we did Canyonland, Dead Horse State Park. We went rock crawling at Hell's Revenge in
Cool.
Moab, which
Yeah.
definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone. That was terrifying.
We
with
took
the
a
kids.
Hummer.
Yeah.
It was
Nice.
a Hummer that had theater seating built into it. So it took like 10 passengers.
Okay.
You know, you're all
Yep.
raised up. And we did all kinds of trails in this like four-wheeling area. And they even went up hills backwards.
Oh, it's terrifying. At one point, I thought the Hummer was going to just
I thought
stand
it
up
was gonna
straight.
Yeah.
The guy
All
was.
right.
I mean, it was crazy, and it was funny because we had those UTVs behind us following, and a lot of them were like backing up because
They gave up.
they didn't want to go the route that we were going. But I wouldn't have driven back there without a tour guide. That looked terrifying to me. But it was so scenic and so beautiful and so hot. And believe it or not, we were there a week before that major heat wave. So I
Yeah.
can't even
Can't
imagine,
even imagine what it'd
how
been
hot
like.
it would have been
Yeah.
had we had been there during that heat wave. One of the other areas we hit in Utah, which was really great, was Monument Valley. And that was pretty spectacular. It was very quiet. It was a lot of driving to get there. It felt like we were driving through Arizona for quite a while. Navajo Nation was closed at the time.
Okay.
But, the monuments are still there. You could still see them from far away. And I was determined. It was kind of a bucket list.
Yeah. And you're that
moment.
close, right?
Yeah,
You're,
it was really
'Cause,
neat.
if you drive to Florida again, you're going to want to take a different route now because there's so many different routes to go. So.
There are so many different routes
Yep.
to go. And the kids enjoyed that too. We were really surprised though as we drove into Monument Valley with the amount of garbage. When you're driving through there and you think about how sacred that land is, and you just look out and there's so much litter on the side of the road, just garbage everywhere.
That's
That was
unfortunate.
something I wasn't expecting to see. It felt like once we left Washington, like recycling was not a thing.
It wasn't like the natives, were dumping. It was
Yeah.
like tourists driving through, throwing
Throwing
their
stuff.
crap out the
that's
window.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. From there we went on to, was it Albuquerque next?
Yep.
Was it Albuquerque? Yep.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. You know, we pulled in, we did, like I mentioned before, we did that Standia aerial tram. We went to downtown Albuquerque, and the next thing we knew, we were in the middle of a gay pride parade, which was really fun.
Fun.
So we were driving around honking, and the kids were having a blast. It was also very
took a
hot
bus
there.
tour.
Yeah, we did a bus tour. The Albuquerque, what was it, like the trolley, which was really neat. And then the next part of a trip was a lot of driving. We did. We went through Texas, right?
So what I did is we took Albuquerque, and we knew that we wanted to get to Arkansas,
Okay.
Little Rock. And so we just kind of looked for where's halfway. And so that was just in the inside of Oklahoma. And so we stayed, I don't even remember what it was. It was some campground and I can't remember. But anyway, we stayed at a KOA there. Oh, that was that one that was in like Lee, Oklahoma.
Well, we stopped at Oklahoma City, right, to do the
Elk.
memorial,
Yeah.
and then we continued on.
But that's why we stopped there,
Yeah.
because we stopped at Elk City in Oklahoma. And then we had no expectations. We were just going to stop there and keep going.
Yeah.
And then we said, okay, we'll do Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And I wish we would have done like 2 days there, because, you know, we were listening to a podcast about Oklahoma. And then we also learned about, what was it, the
Tulsa
Black
burning.
Wall Street?
Yeah, that was really interesting. We listened to a lot of podcasts, including RV Out West.
Hey. Nice
See
plug.
America, which
Yep.
is the one that you
Yeah,
had
See
turned
America
up.
is great,
That
yeah.
was terrific. Texas was fun. We took the kids to Walmart to buy spray paint and just told them that, you know, we were going to be driving through and having a fun stop there. And we showed up at the Cadillac Ranch, which for those
Nice.
of you that don't know is an art installation where you can stop and graffiti. There's 10 Cadillacs.
10
that
caddies,
are-
nose
Mhm.
down.
And so we brought the kids there, gave them their spray paint that they picked, and they went to town and they had such a great time. That was a fun
That was
experience.
another one of those things where we found that there was so much litter. Like
Yeah.
people were spray painting the cars instead of taking their cans with them, just dumping them on the ground there.
Like instead of packing it in, packing it out, it was just trash everywhere.
And
So.
I was surprised on the way out of there onto the next on ramp onto the highway. There was a bug ranch.
Oh yeah, we had to stop and get gas, and then we got off on the next exit, and it's like kind of the same idea, but with VW Beetles.
Oh,
Called the
really?
Bug Ranch. We had no idea. Unexpected.
I
fun.
had a way better experience at the bug
I
ranch
have
than
to
we
s-
did
yeah.
the other.
That's super
Yeah.
cool.
It was much closer to walk, and there wasn't really anybody there. The kids were so excited because they could pull out the spray paint again and graffiti some more cars. I mean,
Yeah, why not? Who wouldn't
It
want to
was,
spray paint?
yeah, it was a
What
lot of
fun.
fun. Yep. And then we made it to Arkansas. We stayed at a really cool park there called Burns Park.
Yeah,
we really liked it.
A state park.
Yeah, that was a really nice park. That was one of those nights where we rolled in really late.
Yeah.
We had like lanterns out while he was backing in, kind of a night.
There
It
was no lights at all. We couldn't see.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That's why you can't flashlights as like markers.
One of the big highlights for our younger one is he really wanted to visit the big Bass Pro Shops in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, okay.
It's like 500,000 square feet. He's seen it on Dude Perfect, and so he just really wanted to go.
It's a big triangle kind of. It used to be a basketball arena. But
Okay.
They converted it into a Bass,
Bass
Pro
Pro
Shop
Shops.
and a hotel.
Yeah.
So we did that for him that night, and then went back to our
Yeah,
campsite.
it blew his mind. He was.
Did
so
you stay in the
excited.
park? Did you camp at the boondock in the parking lot? Or-
No,
No.
but we did a lot of research on that and heard that there was a lot of like noise because like the local teenagers go there to hang out at nighttime.
Oh, gotcha.
So we didn't bother there. We
Yeah, that
ended
makes
up at
sense.
Tom Sawyer. It was
Yeah.
right on the Mississippi
What was
River.
the name?
I mean, like
Sawyer.
literally, our camper was like 100 feet from the Mississippi
Tom
River.
Sawyer RV Park, another plug for another cool local little place that was a nice find. Someone gave him the recommendation.
There was no special frills at all. It was just a campsite.
But it was nice.
But it was
really
really
nice.
well maintained. It was cement pads. They had full hookups. It was perfect.
And they had some cool like tree houses they were building while they're
Oh,
there.
right. They were
Remember
building
those?
like a
real
tower.
futuristic tree houses. They weren't open yet, but they looked pretty neat. Also, the next day, also in Tennessee, we did the Lorraine Hotel, which
Mm-hmm.
again, another kind of educational component for the kids because we had been learning about Martin Luther King. And for those of you that don't know, that's where he was assassinated. Unfortunately, the day that we were there, the museum wasn't open. And we knew that, right? Because there were certain days they were open and it just, unfortunately, the dates and the timing didn't align for us, but we still wanted to go. It was really neat. They had a lot of video kiosks outside. So even though the museum wasn't open, there was so much still to read and
It was
do.
an outdoor museum.
Yeah. It was pretty fascinating and the kids really enjoyed that as well. And then we headed down to Alabama after that. And then we had, at this point, I think we were really tired. And we had a little bit of a faux pas. We showed up at the wrong campground.
Oops.
We showed up at, what was it, Gunter Hill Campground, which was really cool. And we had gone back and forth.
But
on
you didn't have
Wednesday,
reservations for
But
them?
we didn't have reservations.
Were you able to spend the night?
We did. At last
Nice,
Had an
minute.
okay.
opening.
Yeah, at last minute, we're like, just forget it. We're not going to the other one. It's another hour away. We're just dropping here for the night.
But that leads us to, this was an Army Corps of Engineers site.
I've heard about these. Like
So
COEs.
yeah, so we had a couple of those in our agenda that we were staying at, but this happened to be the first one by chance, and it was so well maintained.
It was.
Because there's I hear these are the best places to stop. They're either free or like really inexpensive, and they take donations or whatever. But all of the people that work there are usually volunteers, are camp hosts. And so if you can stay or find one, because there's not a lot in our area, but they're the best places to stay.
And how did you find this particular one?
Well, we put what we thought was the address and the navigation. Like, I didn't put the address. I put the name, and that name popped up. So we drove there and found out we were at the wrong place.
Gotcha. So total just
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I was like, what's the worst that can happen? We
Right.
just lose
40
our money at the other one. At this point, we're tired. If
It
you
would
got
have
a
been
spot,
40 more minutes. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Now,
whatever.
Yep.
But it was one of the first nights where we just got to chill.
Yeah,
right?
we ate at the picnic table.
Yeah, and there was
caught
firefly.
lightning.
Yeah.
Caught lightning bugs, and it was a good family experience.
And it was so spaced out that didn't like we felt like we were in the woods. There was a playground right behind our campground area.
Yeah.
So it just felt really relaxed.
Was that the boys' first time ever seeing lightning bugs? Or
yeah, totally.
Okay. I mean, the first time I ever saw them, I was 33 years old. When we were living out in Philly, I'd never seen them before. And
Well, we got jars and they were catching
Yeah,
them. And it
blew
was
my
just a
mind. They're
nice
cool.
moment, right? Like where we
Yeah.
just all kind of chilled and unwound. Because up until that point, every day had been just
A rush, because
Yeah.
we were focused on getting to Florida by the date, and it was like we wanted to make sure to hit every campground. And what's even more frustrating is almost every site I went out of the way to make sure to get the best site they had, and to make sure that they had a swimming pool so we could get there early, go swimming and have fun. Every night we made to the sites by like 8-9 o'clock.
yeah, and you weren't swimming.
No swimming.
So from this point, we're in Alabama, and it was definitely a more of an educational
We were
component.
following the
civil rights kind of a trail.
Trail of Tears.
No, not the Trail of Tears, the Civil Rights Trail. We
Right,
did Selma.
Yeah.
We went to the kids, in terms of preparing for the trip and everything that they had been learning about civil rights. We showed them the movie Selma way before we went, and I decided it would be a really full circle kind of interesting moment to bring them to that bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so we showed up there. And I have to say, it was the first time on our trip where it occurred to me that I felt like we were unsafe. I put us in an unsafe position because we rolled up at the bridge. And like looking back now, we were a traveling circus with a truck, 4 kayaks on the top, an RV, and
It was
here
like
we
5
are.
or 6 at night.
Yeah. Oh, was it that late? I
It
don't
was
remember.
later, and
But
there
we
was
were the
nobody
only.
around.
There was nobody around. It was just us, and there was a strange man on a bike that was kind of just circling and kind of watching us. And I was aware at this point, like this is kind of
He approached
odd.
us,
Yeah,
asked
then-
us if we could give him,
money.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like,
All right, we gotta leave.
Maybe this is not
We
a
need to
great
move on.
idea. And I wanted to go across the bridge. I wanted to stay longer and read the memorials. But at that time, as a parent, I'm like, maybe this is not a good idea.
You got to trust your gut on
and
those
I did.
situations.
We did trust our gut, and that's when I was like, oh, we are just kind of
Yeah, totally.
a target. But it was still a great experience. I'm glad we got to have that moment. It was a teaching moment. One of the other things we did while we were in Alabama is we went to the Legacy Museum, which was really fascinating. And it was built on like a slave depot where slaves were traded, and it was so interactive. There was so much to read. There's so much photography about the history of this country. You know, they had signs and replicas of what happened in the South, and just images that will haunt you and you can't forget. And I was so glad that our kids had that opportunity to go through, you know, to see more than what they read about in the textbooks, to see, you know, the signs of water fountains that said black only and white only. Like, these are real signs from our history, from our country, you know, seeing postcards of hangings, like how people celebrated this. It was crazy. It was overwhelming. It was interactive. You could type in your zip code. They had big touch screens to see like what kind of historically, like if there was lynchings in your area and different things of that sort. I mean, it was just phenomenal. There was no charge to get in. I wish there was something or some way that every single person in our country could go and experience it. It was just so incredible and so moving. And it wasn't a huge museum, but it was just so well done. All of the staff that were there walked around, would answer questions. I mean, just the images, it was just phenomenal.
That's awesome.
One of the other things that we did while we were there was the National Museum for Peace and Justice Memorial.
Oh, yeah.
And that was another one that was just unreal. They had these huge, what would you call them?
Like
6 foot.
They're like marble pillars.
Yeah, hanging, and then
They're these large marble pillars that were hanging.
steel. They were actually steel.
Oh,
steel
steel.
monuments.
There were steel monuments that were just hanging. Like, there were hundreds of them. And those were to represent individuals that were lynched. And it had, like, the information of the story of what happened for each of them.
What it was is I'm just looking here at my notes, it was 800 of them. And every county in the U.S., they had the name and the date of a person that was lynched. They went back and they reconstructed it from records and confirmed it. And we went through that whole memorial, and it was just so overwhelming because you're standing there and you're looking ahead and you're seeing all these names engraved. And sometimes they would say unknown. And then you would look at the dates and it would be a bunch of unknowns all on the same dates, and you're just overwhelmed by the amount of these steel boxes hanging from the ceiling. And then we got out and we kept walking, and as we were talking with one of the volunteers there, he was telling us, oh, there's more. And I was like, what do you mean there's more? And we looked, and there was just rows of more steel boxes waiting to be hung, but they couldn't be hung until they verified with the different counties the names. And it was just
That's
like,
wild.
wow.
Yeah, that's intense.
It was really, I mean, and then across the street they had the center where they had short story movies where they were in, you know, in
They had the jars too, right? The jars of
they
soil.
had movies about, like, short story movies geared to like all ages, talking about incarceration and, you know, different parts of history, and like they kept playing like every 5 minutes, which was really interesting. And then they had jars, and so they were trying to pay tribute to different people that were, you know,
Lynched.
victimized and lynched, some known, some unknown, and you know they would get soil from all the different
spot.
locations. It was
that's
just
cool.
phenomenal,
That's
and it
cool.
was such a really awesome place to go and really have that moment with your family. It was
that's
something
cool.
that all people should be able to experience. And I hope, you know, more and more people will learn about it and go and take the time to visit. So it was a pretty neat place. And then, you know, from there we headed and we made it to Florida, and the kids were so excited. We were in the Panhandle area. Was it State Park, Fort Pickens? Or
That was
State, right?
federal state park, or federal park.
Federal Park, couldn't remember. And we were so excited. It was probably like 5 or 6 when we got there. And when we got there, we found out we had to evacuate the next day by 9 a.m., I think it was, because there was a tropical storm watch, and we hadn't been keeping track of the news. And so that was a big bummer, because driving through, it just looks so cool. It's like white sand beaches, and you could see the water on each side. So, you know, we got there, we dropped for the night, and like while he was setting up, I quickly took the kids to the beach because they could not wait to get into the ocean. So we literally had like 2 hours in the ocean from that.
That
whole
was an
trip.
amazing sight, because it was like a, I don't know, like a 4-mile road where you have the intercoastal on one side of you and the ocean on the other side of you. Well, it's not the ocean. I guess, it's the Gulf of Mexico. But it's
beautiful.
just white sand for 4 miles
Yeah.
straight.
That's cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And our little one was so bummed because he wanted to fish. And so the next morning, before we got on the road, and we knew he wasn't going to catch anything, we took him down to the ocean and he, casted and reeled and didn't catch anything. But the sky was black and the water was blue, and
Yeah.
it was nice. And that started our journey into Florida. And
One more night in Jacksonville
Yep.
Beach. We
That's
stayed
right.
on Jacksonville Beach at another good state park.
Yeah.
And then
Was that Hannah Anderson, I think, or something
I think
like
so.
that?
Hannah
Yeah.
Anderson, yeah.
How many nights? So when you were camping, were you unhooking your truck, or were you mostly staying hooked up just so you'd
Well,
have
if we were
less chores?
If we needed to go somewhere, we unhooked. Like if we wanted to go sightseeing or something like that, we unhooked. Or if we or were on like a really level site, we might have unhooked. But for the most part, we didn't unhook any.
Yeah. And then, so as we kind of start to wrap up a little bit, now knowing what you know, right? What advice would you tell your earlier self? Things that you would want to do differently if you were going to take this trip again?
Pack less food.
Pack less food.
Buy as you go.
Yeah, so I don't know. I liked not doing laundry. I thought that we were in a position to not have to do laundry. That saves so much time. Don't stop and do laundry because then that takes time to do the laundry. Don't bring so much stuff because we like the kayaks. We could have rented them anywhere.
We packed too much toys, I think. I thought the kids were going to need things to keep them entertained, and they really didn't.
We didn't offer a lot of screen time either.
Yeah.
We talked about things, listened to podcasts. She had a podcast. I don't remember the name of the podcast, but anytime we were gonna go to
that was
a
a See
place,
America.
they had the best podcast.
And they were
amazing.
short.
Yeah.
They were short and concise and to the point. I know we
Yep.
didn't talk about our trip back, but I remember we listened to the one on wall drugs, and that was pretty cool. And they're just really random.
Yeah, we
and
listened to
so-
the one on going to the Sun Road as we were driving going to
Yeah.
the Sun Road
And
in
it's
Glacier. It
perfect.
was perfect. And like,
It
here
was-
we are, we're on the road.
Yeah.
It gave us a chance to some things. Don't forget to look for this when we get there. You know,
Right.
It was really-
Badlands. On the way back, we stopped at Badlands and we listened to the Wall Drug and Badlands, and
Yeah.
that gave us a lot of tips.
So, and I think plan in advance. And I mean, part of it, the timing of us purchasing this RV didn't allow us to plan as far in advance as most people do. But I think that way you can get optimal spots. I mean, when we went to the national parks on our return trip, we didn't get to stay in the parks because they were just booked up. So
And you don't have to stay right outside of the park of wherever you're going. Like whenever we went to Yellowstone, we did stay an hour away, so that did kind of suck up an hour in each direction getting to the
and
park
from,
and back.
right.
But we weren't like in a park where there were so many people and a lot going on. We found a better deal. It was a nicer park.
yeah,
It was a
but
good
I would have
experience.
preferred to have stayed in the park, right? One of the
Yeah, but-
things on our trip is we brought our dog.
Yeah.
And, he's 14 years old, so he couldn't go into a lot of the places with us. So we would stay hooked up and keep him in the AC RV, but that limited our time to explore that day. So if we were
Sure.
closer, we could have run back to the RV,
Taking him out on a
taken him
walk,
out,
make
and
sure he had
then,
water
yeah.
and-
So
yeah.
we were kind of constricted on time, just thinking about him and making sure that his needs were taken care of. So.
What advice for somebody who's maybe sitting on the fence thinking about doing something similar? Would you any words of encouragement to push them over the edge if they're
So really didn't have a lot of experience whenever we started this journey. I think that I would have liked to had a little bit more time getting those shorter trips.
more time? What I mean, take more than 16
Getting the
days?
experience. No, getting the experience of driving the RV.
Oh,
Because there was a
okay.
couple of oh my god moments, like my hitch. I took the X trucks out. That's what I used to keep my unit stabilized. I took it out before I hooked up to the bumper of the truck, and the whole thing lurched forward and made the jack roll off of the jack stands. So that was like, oh my God, I ruined my, everything. But thankfully, I didn't do any damage except for bend a little piece of metal. But it was things like that made me like, I never did it again.
Right.
And I'm not going to do it
That's
again.
how you learn, right?
Yeah.
Trial and error.
Right.
But it was just, I think that we kind of jumped too quickly. I would have liked to had more experience.
Gotcha. Okay.
I say you just do it.
Yeah.
Just go for it, Just wing it.
She's the one that made us do it quickly. And you know what? I'm glad we did it. I would do it again tomorrow.
At the end of the day, right? You can't run out of food. You can buy it somewhere. If you forget something, you can buy it. Just go.
We did. We had to buy 3 angled pipes for our black tank. You know the tank that, the tube that goes into the ground? I kept leaving those behind.
Oh, yeah.
Not the actual tube, but I kept leaving them.
That 90-degree angle elbow. Yeah.
I mean, if that's the worst that can happen, whatever.
Now you know.
It's all good. But I'm glad we had the adventure. You don't live forever. I hope that our kids will talk about this at their Thanksgiving dinners or Christmas. Remember that time that mom and dad took us on this crazy trip? These are the memories. I feel like these are the things that they're going to remember. They each came away with different things. Both of them had so much fun at the Bonneville Salt Flats. They both keep talking about that. That was one of the highlights of their trip. And they both loved Moab. We spent a few days in Moab. I think that it was one of those locations where we didn't drop and leave the next day. So that was very memorable to them, and it was phenomenal. We got to watch the sunset at Balance Rock. We did have a little faux pas at Moab.
Oh, man.
We actually didn't mention that, but we decided we were going to go see something called, what was it? The
Jug Handle.
I read about it on a
an
blog.
arch.
And so they just mentioned it was off this road, and I was like,
Yeah,
huh.
they said you could see it from the
the
parking
road.
lot on the road.
So we turned into the parking lot. And we're like, where is it?
Where's it
We
at?
don't see it. So Tim thought, oh, well, maybe it's down this road where it
said
says 4x4s or something.
four-wheel vehicles
Yeah.
only. Okay,
So-
well, let's go. We got a truck.
We're driving, and I'm like, I don't think this is it. And
We
the
start to
road is
go up the
winding,
hill.
and the roads is getting smaller. And then at one point, one of our children started crying because it just
was
kind
so
of the road
scary.
dropped off. And I'm like, I really don't think this is it, Tim.
I found a place and I did a
And I was like,
three-point turn.
Yeah, I'm like,
We
I
left.
think we should go. And when you did the 3-point turn, and
Did you find it?
all of us got out of the car except Tim. It was one of those moments we're like, we're gonna get out and
Yeah,
you
we need
turn it
eyes on all
around.
3 corners of the truck. Yeah.
I don't
So-
even know if it was that. We were all terrified at that point.
We were-
yourself.
Yeah. we were a good mile or two in, through this winding
And
road.
it was like the sun was setting. So I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, if we get lost back here, we're never gonna get found. So
we
then
we get all the way through, drive through the parking lot, and I turn the turn signal to get back on the road. And when I looked to check the lane, there was Jug Handle right there, right on
But
the
you
edge.
know what? You guys worked your little heinies off to get to see Jug Handle, man. So, I mean, props to you guys, dude.
At least you saw it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those funny
Yeah.
stories that I hope our kids remember,
Yeah.
and they'll be sharing with their kids. Like, remember when mom and dad did,
That's so
did
funny.
this? But yeah, so we had lots of really random things like that happened, and you can't plan for that.
No,
so that's why I
that's-
say just go for it.
That's
You
that's
know,
where
just do
road
it.
trips,
Yeah.
take on a life of their own.
Totally.
That personification of the road.
Yes. And so that walks you through our trip down.
Thank you guys so much for
You're
taking
welcome.
the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it. And
You're welcome.
I'm looking forward to going camping with you guys.
Yeah, we have lots of trips planned.
Yes, we
Should be
do.
fun.
It's time for a pit stop. And in this pit stop, I want to share about one of my nerdy sides. About 2 years ago, just before the world shut itself off, I became the licensed ham radio operator. With a technician class license, I am able to transmit on specific radio frequencies with other hams. This was something I had been thinking about doing for a while, and I had a few reasons that I was interested in and could see the benefits of being an amateur radio operator. Backcountry communications where cell phones don't or won't work, and grid down communications, just in case, here in the rim of fire that we ever do get the great quake that we are potentially due for. I have a secondary line of communication, and it's just a fun way to talk and meet other people. So what does it mean to be a ham? People use ham radio to talk across town,
around the world, or even into space, all without the internet or cell phones. You can even talk to the International Space Station if you time your communications just right as they pass overhead. If you are a hiker and love to hike, then Summits on the Air, otherwise known as SOTA, might be more your speed. You hike up to the top of a mountain, set up a radio antenna, connect your radio, and then do what they call, or what they say is, activate the mountaintop. And then from the mountaintop, you work to make contacts with other hams in the area. It's sort of a game within the ham community. Similarly, you can do this with POTA, or Parks on the Air, if you're interested in activating local parks in your area where you can communicate with other hams. Ham radio is also becoming more widely used in the overlanding community, as ham radios are more powerful than your standard citizens band or CB radio. So again, for backcountry communications, they are a powerful tool to help one communicate with their party or with other hams in the area. For me, I bring my radio with me when I go into the mountains as a backup for my mobile phone. When I'm RVing, I have my ham radio with me to take on our hikes, or again for a backup communication tool if I ever need roadside assistance or to help someone else who might be in need. So you might be asking yourself, why should I even get licensed? Why do that? Well, in order to communicate on the amateur radio frequency bands, you need to be a licensed operator. There are 3 levels of licenses: technician, general, amateur extra. And with each new classification and license, you will receive more privileges and frequency bands that you are able to transmit on. You might be asking yourself, well, how do I get licensed? The ARRL, or Amateur Radio Relay League, is the largest nonprofit organization that is relating to amateur radios and operators. They have books that you can buy to begin studying for the exam. There is also the hamradioprep.com, and I also found apps to put on my phone and study for the test whenever I found a spare few minutes. The test is only 35 questions, and you need a passing score of 74% to get your license. One of the greatest resources I found and I used was Josh Nass and his Ham Radio Crash Course YouTube channel. Josh provides great information, technical know-how, and encourages everyone to get involved in amateur radio. On his YouTube channel, he has I think it's a 4, maybe a 5-part video series that is all about getting your technician license. I encourage you all to check that out. There have been a couple of instances where some real-world applications that I have experienced as a ham radio operator. My folks live on an island about 20 miles as the crow flies from where I live. I've talked my parents into buying an inexpensive Baofeng handheld radio for like $25. I set it up for them, and while my folks are not amateur radio licensed, they can still use their radio to listen. They just cannot transmit. I have performed tests with them, and I can ping a ham radio repeater from my house that's on their island, and they've been able to hear me. Why is this important? Well, we have a communication plan should we ever experience that great quake that I was talking about in our area. That would also mean that this is a grid-down communications tool, and we have a backup plan so that I can check in on them. This past summer, while stuck in traffic driving through Yellowstone National Park, I used my ham radio to chat with another ham to get real-time traffic updates and helpful information on routing from within the park. It came in pretty handy. One other thing to mention within the ham radio community, there is a wilderness protocol. The wilderness protocol suggests radio operators in the amateur service should monitor standard simplex channels at a specific time in case of an emergency or priority calls. There is a specific set of frequencies that are dedicated to the wilderness protocol, as well as specific times that a ham should check in on these frequencies in case someone is in need of help. The network of amateur radio operators can be there to assist. For more information, do a Google search with keywords Wilderness Protocol. The initial investment in getting your license is your time and as little as maybe $50. It's about $15 to take the test, and again, you can get an inexpensive Baofeng handheld ham radio for about $25 just to get you started and see if this is something that you want to continue doing. If you are interested in learning more, Check out the Ham Radio Crash Course on YouTube, the hamradiotestprep.com for testing information, and the American Radio Relay League at arrl.org. Thanks so much for listening. I'd like to take a moment to discuss a new RV travel magazine called RV Today. This publication is for RVers by RVers, and I would encourage you all to consider subscribing in either digital or in the digital and print editions. I am an affiliate, and if you choose to subscribe, you will also help support the show. To learn more, head over to my link in my Instagram bio. In 2 weeks, we interview Tara of Tara's Tiny Trailer on Instagram. Tara is a fellow Washingtonian who travels in her Happy Camper travel trailer around the Pacific Northwest. She shares with us her story and the places she loves to camp. You won't want to miss this episode. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again in 2 weeks with our next episode. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And I sure would appreciate if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.